Truth is a pressure, and I see us all shying away. But, my friends, from truth there can be no escape. Hello, and welcome to the Legendarium Green Team's Malazan series. Welcome to episode 4 of our Bonehunters series. I am Ashaman, and I'm joined today by Befuddled Panda.
Hello.
Fan.
Saruete.
And Yasna as a boy.
Hello.
Myself and Fan are veterans to the series, and Panda's reading for the first time. Yasna as a boy, he was, but he's gone a bit far ahead. Hasn't finished the series yet, though. We will be doing our standard format for this episode. That means we will be covering it chapter by chapter and getting to listener questions at the end. You guys ready to jump in?
Do it.
Chapter 16. Grub convinces Keneb that they shouldn't leave without the veterans. Cutter's cohort leaves the village. Ganos revels in his new power, and Karsa decides to hitchhike to Lether. So, what did you guys think of this chapter of Bonehunters? Panda, why don't you go first?
I just said I love Grub. Grub is such a mysterious character because, we didn't really get all that much about why does he, have so much intuition, or how is he so knowledgeable. I just want to know more. But yes, he does save the 14th hide by telling Keneb to not leave right away. But then Keneb looks, incompetent to the rest of his peers. Why is he delaying us? But yeah, it's all for their own good.
Tavor sees right through it, though, which good on you, Tavor.
See, the thing about Tavor is, and we get into it a little bit later, is how does she know so much? And maybe Timbre has something to do with it. And then it's well, then who really is Timbre? Maybe Timbre is, I don't know.
Hood?
No.
I'll just say it. A lot of that is just Tavor being perceptive. Or at least someone around Tavor being perceptive and maybe telling her. But yeah, she can just suss these things out.
Yeah. Anyway. So yes, I love Grub. He stood out to me.
The way he talks got me real confused reading back through this, though. Because I got to that, and the big man with the cut hand says yes. And I was like, oh, I know, it's the Haboric thing. And then I was like, and then he says, I found a bone whistle and I'm keeping it for him because I want it back. And I was like, what? What does the bone whistle have to do with Haboric? And it took me forever to be like, oh, no. This is about Gessler. Not he switches mid-stream from talking about Haboric to talking about Gessler, and it threw me off.
I mean, I didn't know until you just said it, so I was like, I don't know about this bone whistle.
It's the Solanda to control the drummers, or the drummer for the drummers.
Yes, I see.
It's a good crew in the Solanda.
Yes.
Not as good as the crew of Iskarel Pust's boat, though, right?
The ghosts.
No,
the Bokarala.
Oh, she says that they're not the real crew, and that it's really Ghost of Toy Standee.
Ghosts can't crew a ship. Yasna, come on.
But headless corpses can.
Yeah, of course, magic.
Well, because they're physical.
Yeah, right.
Do ghosts not have any physicality in Malazan?
It's hard to tell.
Well, so you don't believe Spite? You think she just made it up? What, to spite Iskarel Pust and his
I'm trolling you.
In this chapter, what stood out to me was all of the army stuff, especially with Grub and Keneb, and it makes me love Keneb even more. The dude's a bro. Grub is cool, and the way he talks, like you said, is really interesting, and you need to listen to everything that kid says. And finally, when Fiddler catches up to them, and everyone's just like, oh my god, and it's like the most badass thing ever, right? Do you remember the line that he said?
Something about
I'm gonna read it.
Oh, you're gonna read
me
it.
Chills. Fiddler turned his head and spat blood when he smiled, a chilling, ghastly smile, the flaking lips splitting in twin rows of red, glistening fissures. Aye, he said in a rasp, we went hunting through the bones of a damn city, and then with the captain's help we crawled out of that grave.
Yeah.
Bonehunters in truth.
And Pores and Kindly, the Pores pretending to like cough out bones. That was awesome.
Yeah.
Let's see. This is not about the army, but my favorite part about the whole thing, even though like Fiddler coming back and Keneb and stuff is really cool, I really enjoyed the conversation between Mappo and Spite.
Yeah.
Yeah. If ever there was a conversation between two people that would please Yasna in this series, it's probably that one, eh?
Yep. It was really good. Really good.
Yeah.
I have like so much of it highlighted. It's ridiculous.
That's actually
Nearly
one
every
of the
line for me.
examples. That's exactly one of the examples that I thought of when, like, we had a discussion on Discord about Malazan, and somebody was asking, like, so what is Malazan? And we were all trying to sum it up for them. But it's like this section is, you could write papers just about the conversation, the topics that they discuss here. And I started going down a bit of a rabbit hole in like researching just very lightly political economic theory. And then because I never actually took economics in college. It was one of the subjects I wanted to take, but classes were at 8:30 a.m. So no, thank you.
If you want to really understand political economy, though, you can't. Economics in college ain't going to teach you any of that stuff.
Yeah,
Well,
you
at
can't take
least,
economics to understand economic
You have
theory.
to at least take political economy. But even that, depending on the prof.
I did take one course of political economy, but the interesting part was when I was researching is John Stuart Mill's and his principles of political economy, which I never studied, or at least I don't remember studying. But now I want to like actually read it because,
He wrote On Liberty, right?
huh?
He wrote On Liberty?
I don't remember. I can look it up though.
I have a friend in Canada who just published like a huge political economic text
Really?
that I really want to read. Yeah,
Sounds like a nerd.
he is a huge nerd. I actually quote him in my What is Grimdark video about, because I had to define political economy. So I was like, I asked two nerds.
Yeah.
One of them said this, and the other one said that. He was one of the nerds.
Yeah. Yes, he is the one who wrote On Liberty. And his approach to economics was much more holistic than traditional economics, which I really appreciated. So, anyway, see, tangent took me down a hole.
Tangent. Yeah, this is probably one of the only subjects where I have no interest in the nerdy thing here. Like economics,
Really?
I don't care. I understand
But
like
it
the
impacts
basics.
you so much.
Oh yeah, absolutely. But
With
you know,
Ash.
if I'm going to be nerdy about stuff, it's going to be about stuff that's not that.
I'm much more interested in aesthetics.
Like magic systems.
Oh, I'm not actually. Magic systems. I've fallen out of love with them in a lot of ways. But yeah, like I like the philosophical meanderings. Although of course it's impossible to separate philosophy from anything nerdy. But yeah,
Yeah,
aesthetics,
like-
morals.
Yeah, nobody's
Some of
surprised, Ash.
Yeah.
Some of, like a lot of the best political economists have like huge tomes of philosophy and also explain their philosophy in their political economy textbooks too.
My
it's
pop
totally
philosophy
inseparable.
professor is he's fond of saying that things stop being philosophy when they start being when people decide they're useful and just kind of cut them off. That's how you get like the sciences. That's how you get economics. That's how you get like art and stuff and religion. You know, it's just all these things. They're really just philosophical.
That magic systems comment reminds me, for all of our listeners who for some reason are not listening to the Legendarium podcast, AP just did a really cool episode with Craig and some other guy.
I have not listened to that yet.
AP
really
is always smart.
Unrelated, but I forgot to mention the scene with Keneb? No, it was Ballistic. Ballistic, he was talking to Tavor, and she said, we'll have to convince them by any means necessary. And he says, let's hope not by the sword. and he realized just how bad that sounded as soon as he said it.
Yep. And Devorah's like, come on!
It's like a
Stop
totally
undermining me,
rational
troops!
It's a
Yeah,
totally rational thing to say too, if you're not like walking on eggshells about the sort of
In
morality.
that conversation, it made sense completely in context, but at the same time, it kind of gives this really bad vibe.
Yep.
It's like, man, ouch.
It was a bit tone deaf. Yeah. I liked the line, but Puss says, with regards to his Bokrala crew not obeying his instructions, if I am their god, why don't they listen to anything I say? Yep. That encapsulates a lot of the themes of these chapters.
And the response is they're
Well,
waiting
maybe
for
you
you to say
haven't-
what they want to hear.
Yeah. And it's like, well, what is it? Whatever it is they want to hear.
Yep. It's like, well, we'll talk about this later, but Drek had kind of the same problem. Except for, of course, she just murdered all of her followers. Which, fair.
Yeah, Drek came to a final solution on that problem.
Yeah.
I mean,
Can't blame Drek there.
There's like 2 priests of Drek left.
say again,
Do we have anything else to say about this chapter?
You could learn more about Drek in the Path to Ascendancy novels.
It's funny because I was about to say that. Not even just about Drek, but specifically about what led to this.
Yeah.
Is in the Path to Ascendancy novels. So since I read that out of sequence, that was weird because I had already read the prequel explaining it, and then I get to these scenes, I'm like, this is what Esselmont was, basing it off of. What were you about to say, Panda?
I have one of the Path to Ascendancy books, but then I also got Knight of Knives, so we'll see.
Which is way better than any of the Paths to Ascendancy books. It's so good.
I agree.
And it's so short. I don't dislike the Path to Ascendancy novels, but Knight of Knives is just good.
I don't dislike them either, but I think they're not nearly as good as the other novels.
Cuckoo.
Knight of
We'll
Knives
see when I get around to it.
Oh, here, and I'm surprised you haven't already brought up how the jacket of the book is unceremoniously butchered in this chapter.
Yeah, I really liked her, Ganath. And she apparently knew Synagig too, and Synagig's sister. And she's like, oh man, I wish they were here. I'm like, oh, that's so on Jaghut. But then she gets killed and she's like, ooh, chills. I guess that's what you'd expect as a Jaghut. It was so sad.
That I noted. I was like, if Jagguts are solitary, why does Geneth want to be with Synagig? Synagig?
Synagig.
Synagig.
She's been like the past however many hundreds of years alone. I'm sure she's good for like one family Thanksgiving.
Okay. But yeah, that was an abrupt ending to her character.
Sometimes you just die.
Especially Jaghut, they're good at it.
Yeah, they are. Well, sometimes.
They could
Sometimes they're good at.
route.
Sometimes they're good at getting stuck under rocks for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
They could chain Naruk being back. Is that ever gonna pay out, or is it just world buildy stuff?
Do you
I
want
feel
us to
like it's
say?
going to come back up.
I can answer the question.
Mm.
The
I shouldn't
reason
have
why I
asked.
say it is because, well, never mind. I'm probably
I will
wrong.
say, Steve is holding a Chekhov's gun to the head of the series with all those sky keeps in the Imperial Warren, right? He is fine just letting Chekhov's guns go unused, but
Yeah, I know. That's why I'm like, well, this could either be huge in the Crippled God or Dust of Dreams, or it could just be nothing.
Okay, to be honest, when they showed up in Memories of Ice, I thought that it would just be contained in Memories of Ice. But
the Naruk were not in Memories of Ice, remember?
well, the
they're
Kachane
mentioned,
stuff.
but, yeah. Lizard
And
boys.
I wasn't really expecting them to come back in any significant way. But apparently they are.
Cool.
I had that same impression actually when I first read the series.
Yeah.
I was thinking, I need more dinosaurs. Please come back.
I think Steve probably thought the same thing.
Probably.
This chapter gave us a pretty cool callback to Gardens of the Moon when I think Solara and Cutter were talking, And he's like, yeah, we're going to Darujhistan. It's so nice. And she's like, hey, like, maybe you could teach me how to be a thief and I can follow in your shadow. He's like, no, don't do that. Oh,
Shadows.
No, I'm sad.
Ah.
It's not good following in someone's shadow.
Yep. And he also talked about, I think he mentioned Absalar's views on the moon, although that might have just been Absalar later on in the chapters.
It's just Absalar later, yeah. It's really sad.
Yes.
I love Solara. She's my favorite.
Really?
Yeah.
How come?
She's just like trying to make a life now that she's not in this crazy cult. And she's like trying to help everybody out and she's trying to find love and yeah.
I see.
I don't know. I just like her.
I like how realistic she is.
I like how nice she is to Cutter and how she like kind of takes him under her wing. And yeah.
Sleeps with them.
But she also like, I like how she kind of like gets under everybody's skin and like is like plays devil's advocate in like a not crappy way. Actually tries to get them to like justify themselves and like, you know, figure out what they're thinking and like for themselves, you know, like she kind of like just takes the opposite stance to like get them to pull their thoughts together and find a good course of action. I don't know. She has a good effect on all the characters around her, I think. Even when she's being kind of sassy.
She's ironically quite motherly.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yes, she is.
The one line that really stood out with me for Solara was, I think Cutter was like, hey, why didn't you give your baby a name? And she's like, well, if I gave her a name, then I'd have to go back and go get her. So I just try not to think about it. And I'm like, that's too real.
Yeah.
Feather Witch has not changed much.
No.
I still don't like her.
She hasn't. Yep.
I think I like her even less.
She's just a big old meanie.
Yes. I guess
she has no solidarity. Just none.
Solidarity with who?
With like
the fellow witch.
Anybody that's being like oppressed by the Eater or by the Letheri. Yeah. She's just like despite everything she's gone through, she's completely selfish and like obsessed with her own power, even though she doesn't have any.
Like, even when oppressed groups do gain power, like a lot of the times, like, yeah, people in those groups don't have solidarity with other people who are oppressed, right? Like, it's not a transitive property a lot of the time. Which is one of the more unfortunate aspects of human nature.
But she doesn't even have power. She's crappy when she's suffering collectively with people.
She's that too.
Which happens too. I know.
But she did have more power in her community, like, of slaves than the other slaves, and she was just oppressing people in that too.
Exactly.
So, yeah,
she's just climbing on the backs of everybody who's going through the same stuff that she is.
Yep.
Awful woman. No redeeming qualities.
She's pretty.
She's got a finger bone around her neck.
That too.
So, yeah.
Gross.
I don't have any finger bones around my neck. I don't store them in a necklace. Yeah.
If I ever lose a finger, I definitely would do that though.
Chapter 17. Twilight doesn't think Ikariam is all he's cracked up to be. Cotillion pays a visit to his army of child soldiers. Banashar chats with some colorful characters. Eater and Malazan fleet spot each other, and our favorite Gistal re-enters the narrative.
Oh, gross.
Didn't we miss him? Welcome back, Malakral.
Son of a...
I first read this in January, and I was still mad about this chapter this month when I reread it. I didn't get mad again. I was just still mad.
Yeah. Like, no one ever stops being mad at Malakral. It's a perpetual thing.
Were you expecting to see Rel again?
Yeah, because
low key, yes.
Go ahead.
Low key, I was, because I mean, he wasn't resolved in Deadhouse Gates.
In House of Chains, didn't they mention something or no?
He was briefly mentioned, I think, and he was being taken to the Imperial courts or whatever like that.
Yeah. You'll be punished for your crimes, Malakral.
Yeah. I'm like, we're never going to see him again.
I didn't expect to, for him to, so swiftly come out of his situation into, power. The way he's, even in a cell, like has this whisper campaign going on. Like I was like, wow. And I was just so angry as soon as I read the epigraph. Before you even see Malik Rel, like I was just like, what?
Yeah, the twisted version of the truth about the Wiccans, and then
Oh my god,
resulting in them getting slaughtered.
so infuriating. And the thing is, at the time of the Chain of Dogs, until the end, I was like, oh, why do I care? Why I don't care about any of these characters. And like by the end of it, I'm like crying, weeping for them. And now, like 4 books later, I'm like, don't you talk about them? Like,
Yeah.
The line where the people of, I think it was Malaz City, killed all the Wiccans of the city and threw them in the ocean.
Yeah.
And the ocean didn't accept them. And they took that as proof that they're righteous in their anger. And it's like, oh man, no. Mail just doesn't want this.
Yep.
well, it was
Even
kind
Mail
of
rejects.
implied that it's because they dumped them. They didn't dump them in the ocean. They dumped them in like tributaries or rivers or something. And like the water line wasn't high enough, so it was implied that it could be just mundane things that they're interpreting as being Mail's will.
Well, that's it, yeah.
So
Yeah, Mail has a lot of
nothing to do
power,
with
and a
Mail.
priest of Mail can have a lot of influence on people.
And that's Bug. This is Bug's guy.
Yep.
This is why I thought Bug could never be Mail, because I was like, well, he's so kind and
Bug's
Mail's
too nice. Come on.
and
Yeah.
Malik Rel was so awful. That's why it took me by surprise.
But then it's like it goes into the whole, I mean, a major theme in this book is like the gods and their worshippers. Like how much of it is really the god versus the worshippers trying to do things in the name of the god for their own purpose.
Yeah, it's that worship is not always a consensual thing.
Right, but in Midnight Tides, it kind of we didn't have that yet. It's like this is like kind of backwards explaining why Bug is the way Bug is in Midnight Tides. You know what I mean? Because like we had our biggest examples were people like Shadowthrone and Iskral Pust, where they're like exactly like each other. You know?
Well, a little bit of that came in Midnight Tides because Withel was, praying to Bug, and Bug was like almost forced to answer. He kind of chose to, but yeah, like he was definitely having these people worshiping him and calling on him, and he was obviously affected by it in Midnight Tides.
But Withal isn't Malik Rel.
He's not, but I mean, he's a follower. Or
sure,
he forces his hand. Yeah,
I feel like Bug kind of wanted to get some payback against the crippled god after the events of Midnight Tides, though.
Yeah.
Where it's like, I don't think Bug had a grudge against the Wiccans in Deadhouse Gates.
Throughout the narrative. Go ahead.
No, go ahead. Sorry.
Like throughout the narrative, like we can see that it was having an effect, and this is just like some guy praying. He's not like someone as influential as Malik Rel, who is undoubtedly doing much more in his quote worship of Mail, which would, of course, have much more an effect.
It was like a last-ditch effort. You're like, I'm going to pray to somebody, even though I don't like him. Yeah, like he was falling in rivers. He was hearing voices. So think about what like a priest could do.
A Gistal priest.
I have what's the word? Oh my goodness. A prediction.
Admiration for Malik Rel.
No, do not put words in my mouth. A prediction about a speculation.
Prediction about a speculation.
Yes, exactly. Either Malik Rel or Beralta, Tenant Beralta later. I think one of them might be the way to fell the cripple god.
Interesting. Cool.
That's all.
Just file that away under your predictions folder.
Okay.
So around this time, I sent around this time in the book, the first time I was reading it, I sent Kieran a couple of predictions. Am I allowed to say those now, even though I know how they turned out?
Yeah, you can say that.
Yeah.
Sure. So at this point in the narrative, I predicted this one's going to be a no-brainer. You're going to be like, duh. But I predicted a very tragic end for, what's the claw guy's name again?
Pearl?
Pearl?
Pearl. That's right. for Pearl because of his misconceptions about what happened in Egaton. I said, prediction. Corboladom and Malacrel are going to be pardoned and or take over and preside over a total genocide of the Wiccans. If he's ready to take down the Claw, it's even possible they bring down Lysine or render her a figurehead. And then I said, I'm so upset. One conversation with Malacrel was all it took. I hate that guy.
Yeah.
We finally got to meet Raventooth. That's pretty cool.
Was that this chapter?
Yeah,
Yeah.
this chapter. That's the second guy
is
Ben
awesome.
Shark chats with.
Also Temper. Temper's
Yes.
cool.
Temper sounds like a chill guy to have drinks with.
Temper we met before, if you've read some of other not Erickson stuff. There's a cool callback.
And Taishren is just kind of moping in his tower.
Apparently. But, like,
Poor Taishren.
also kind of forced to? Question mark?
Yeah,
Quite forced
it
to
seems like
remain
he's
in
being
his tower?
like very selectively given. I'm trying to think of the correct words. It's not that he's forced to. It's just like people are protecting him or making a buffer between him and the outside world, so that he
why?
keeps doing what he's doing.
Fine.
Taishren's are really, really powerful, and if he chooses a side, that side's gonna win, basically.
Yeah.
Really? Then stick him on
Yeah.
that crippled god.
He's like he's not at Animender's level, but he's like right below Animender in terms of just raw magical ability. It seems, at least.
Well, in this conflict, it's not about the crippled god versus anybody else. It's about
it's internal politics.
Yes.
Okay, that's fair, but Tavor knows about the crippled god, so I wonder how much Lysine knows about the crippled god.
I don't think Lysine cares.
How much does Lysine know about anything? It's so
I don't
mysterious.
know. We barely saw her.
Yep.
So,
okay, fine.
Yeah, Lysine, I never know how much he cares about any of the non-secular stuff.
Can't talk about the conversation between Cotillion and Onrak.
Yes. That's what I was going to get to.
Okay.
That's also where I was going.
So they have a discussion about the Talanimas, and basically what I wrote in my notes is how Cotillion speaks about the Talanimas is how I felt. Like, he reflects how I felt reading Memories of Ice.
How does any of this work?
But it's also like, we face greater threats, and Onrak's just like, they don't care. And I'm like, oh.
Yeah, they've been alive for hundreds of thousands of years, and they've just seen world-ending threats come and go, and they just decided, they're burnt out at this point. They need a vacation. And they vacation to a sail, which is not a good idea.
Yeah,
that's not a vacation!
Yep.
Can't believe that's the very end of all of these books that I have to get to the end of, the crippled god, and then there's, another book before I get to the one called A Sail. And that was set up in Memories of Ice.
Mm-hmm.
So wild.
Don't expect a conclusion like Crippled God. It's good. Don't get me wrong, but it's not going to be like.
Well, obviously, because he's written so many freaking more.
Yeah, those are mostly prequels.
Okay, fine.
What stood in that conversation to me was Cotillion's like, well, so you guys aren't following our orders because the first throne lost its power. Is there any way that we could restore that power? And Monarch comes like, shut up, Onrak! I'm not don't tell him. And he's like, you don't control me. So
and then he doesn't tell him.
Yeah. You don't tell me what to do. I'm going to do it anyway because that's what I want to do. So
he's like, he says something about Cotillion that he asks questions that nobody should be contemplating or something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Sounds right. Cotillion's up to some stuff.
Going down an unseen path.
Yeah, what's with these unseen shadow paths?
What stood out to me is the interesting usage of the child soldiers. Yeah. Because I'm on the superficial level, it's horrible, and it brings up the question of using child soldiers in war, especially when you're desperate, as these guys obviously are. But also, they're not really children. They're these undead things that are going to look like children no matter how many years they live their lives. And so, it's kind of almost like a reverse of what happened in Yucatan, where you see the the soldier like skinning his knee right before he dies, and he like thinks back to like when he skinned his knee in like the city with his mother, and she couldn't leave the city because they had to pay the healers to heal him, and he's like wailing like a child for his mother, which is kind of like, showing how like these people that go off to war, they may look like adults and have the bodies of adults, but like deep down, they're not ready for any of these things that they're dealing with, and there's still that kid inside them that's dealing with its mother. And here you have it kind of reversed, where on the outside they look like children, but they're much older, and everybody can forget that. And you kind of have
call much older. They've like had a few years since Deadhouse Gates.
Yeah, but they seem like they want to be there, and it's their choice, and they don't want to leave. And on top of that, I think somebody said, I don't remember who it was, but they said like in any other context, these kids wouldn't be kids. So
no, it was Honorak. I think he was like, yeah, in my tribe, these guys would be hunting already, sleeping with each other.
Like,
and
these guys are adults already in my tribe.
Enough, but like that, I think that more speaks to how people had to grow up much quicker back in the day when necessity was a thing. And like even today, like, yeah, someone turns 18 legally, they're an adult, but like, are they? Are they? Yeah,
right.
No. It's analogous to this one.
Being an adult is a social construct, and like what it means depends on so many complicated factors.
Yeah,
for sure.
I'm just happy we got back to Troll. Oh boy, I was missing my moral paragon. You know what he does? He holds the line and then he cries because he feels bad about killing his friends.
Aww. But then
and he's such a bro with Onrak.
Yeah. And then Onrak tries to comfort him and he makes it worse. He's like, everyone's looking to you, hoping that you don't die and you protect them all. And he's like, that's not great. I already feel a lot of pressure, Onrak. Thanks a lot.
You know that song in Encanto, Surface Pressure?
Yes.
That's for Troll.
Yeah.
Yes.
But yeah, Onrak's like comment to Troll about, all right, next time I'm gonna leave your side and I'm just gonna go for it. I'm gonna go kill like whatever the leader is.
I'm gonna get angry.
Yeah.
This is what you're gonna turn.
I am so excited to see this. I mean, I don't want him to die. Yeah, but like in full rage.
Yeah, like Tool was angry at the end of Memories of Ice, and that's the benchmark we have for angry Tlanimas.
That's true. Yeah.
I like their interaction when Troll pats him on the back and he dislodges his spear point.
Oh yeah, clunk. Was that holding up anything? Nah.
That's fine.
Only the modest sound it made when I walked. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. So it's not in this scene. It's about Beneskar. So there's like Beneskar and Barathol, and they're like in the same chapters, and it's like pretty close to each other. And I'm like, okay, wait a minute, who am I reading about? Like he has so many. He has 26 letters in the alphabet. He could have chosen another one other than B.
Yeah. I'll be honest. I don't really like Benashar's chapters here because he just kind of drinks and then thinks about drinking and how his quest feels futile. I like his conversation with Pearl later, but it really felt like this wasn't necessary to include.
So
really when I was, because he talks with Temper and Braventooth.
But when I was reading the getting to know Beneskar or whatever his name is,
we'll just pronounce it differently to confuse everybody.
Banna. His name is Banna.
Yeah. Big Bobby
or
B.
Banana. He felt. I was like, is this guy shallow? Is he just like very dumb? But then it turns out, no, he's not dumb. He's just putting on an act. And then I was like, okay, fine, I get it. But I agree with you. Like when I was initially reading his chapters, I was like, this is really boring. I don't like it.
Yeah.
But there was a funny part when he was talking to Braventooth or somebody, and they made the joke about like some dude drinking a bunch of alcohol, and then you know what I'm talking about? Okay, I definitely lost.
I will if you remind me.
I'll pretend it was really funny. Oh,
I like
it.
Bonehunters.
Yeah.
That was really good, Panda.
Thank you for sharing.
Never mind, okay? It might not be in this chapter, it might be in the later chapter. There.
So I like Banascar's sections, but I feel like I'm biased because I read Knight of Knives. So I'm like, ooh, back in Malaz City. I'm excited to
Oh, I
be here.
see.
And there's Temper. I like Temper. And so, you
Yeah, I
know,
read
there's
Night
a
of Knives
lot
like a
of
week ago, so it was
there's a
right
lot
on
of
my mind.
Esmomont fan service in the Banascar
Fine! I shall read that
section.
book. Oh, I
Yeah, I think
found
that's
it.
a good way to.
That's a good way too.
I think that's a good explanation for why I probably enjoyed it more than you two as well.
Okay. The funny part. Banascar says, heard about a Napan sailor drank a keg's worth of leech swill, then standing too close to a lit wick, went and blew off most of his backside. How does that illuminate matters, I wonder? Momentarily, I'd imagine, says Braden.
I
That
did
is a
like
good
that
joke.
part. It was funny. I did completely forget it, but now that you were saying it, I remember laughing at it.
Speaking of which, I liked the part where Banascar goes up to Braventooth and offers to buy him another tea, and he's like, "What are you trying to poison me? Why are you drinking it? I don't know. The guy gave it to me."
He's trying to bleed red tears just for like dramatic
Yeah.
effect.
Yep.
He's like, "Oh, last time I did this, it's when Dawson died."
Yeah, that's the only other time I cried. Yeah.
He's like, "That's what I get for believing everything I hear."
hmm We find out Animander's full name in this chapter.
Animandaris Purake.
Purake. Like,
Yep.
is Erickson just a fan of adding more letters to somebody's name?
Oh, it's so comical how elaborate Animander's name is, isn't it?
Does
Because
it
he
get
has like
more
5
elaborate?
different titles. It doesn't like his name doesn't get more elaborate, but he has so many titles. He's like the first son of Mother Dark.
Oh yeah.
Mane of
Something-
Chaos.
Yeah, just drinker of the blood of TM. Yeah, knight of the High House Dark,
Dang.
etc., etc. Consort to Solana.
Is this the first time we see it as Purake?
I think so.
Is that not in the Midnight Tides
Oh,
prologue?
if it
or
was,
anywhere
I
in-
missed it.
This is when
Yeah.
Panda learned it.
Yeah, when I learned it.
I
And
don't
we
know
also
when I
get-
learned it.
We get like a hint of what Karkanis is about, or part of what Karkanis is about in the tapestry that Alrada reads or thinks about.
I
Oh,
think that's
so
the next chapter, isn't it?
No, the Onyx
Maybe.
Order, the 4
Yeah,
barely
the history of
grown
Blue
sorcerers.
Rose as well. Yeah.
A long section about.
Yeah, like first Andarist got exiled from Mother Dark, and then Animander was angry about that, so he got exiled, and then Silchus tried to keep everything together, and then eventually he got exiled. No, he didn't get exiled. He made an alliance with the Eater, and then he got screwed for it.
Yeah.
Yep.
Poor Silchus.
Yeah.
I can't wait to read Carcanus.
I
It's
can't
a
wait
good
for you to
series.
read Carcanus.
Okay, there was a nice thought by Cotillion. I thought it was very well put. He says, and the blood which they had shed so profusely had yielded no evidence of its taint, for neither the name of a people, nor the hue of their skin, nor indeed the cast of their features could make life's blood any less pure or precious. It's like,
Almost like racism is bad.
yes.
Yeah. It is a very poignant bit, though. And yeah, like you were saying, yes, no, these Eater don't have any sympathy for even other Eater.
Bleep.
Surely that won't cause any tragedy later on down the line.
No. Chapter 18. Fiddler shows off.
Wait,
Nope.
I got one thing.
Okay.
Sorry.
One last thing.
It's a really
I'm cutting,
beautiful
yeah.
line that I also like. That was another callback to Gardens of the Moon.
I'll permit it.
Pearl.
No, I don't think it was Pearl. It says here, behind the small window in the thick stone walls, he could hear the battered and crusted weather vane somewhere overhead, creaking and squealing in the buffeting gusts of wind assailing Mock's hold. And he and Lestara had been no different from that weather vane, spinning tossed this way and that, helpless victims of forces ever beyond their control, beyond even their comprehension. And didn't that sound convincing? Hardly. So I guess it was.
Okay. Now that you said that, I have one more thing. Because I was going to bring this up, but I didn't remember if this stuff started happening in these chapters or in the next chapters. So, interestingly, I don't know if you guys have all seen AP's video about the prologue of Gardens of the Moon where he talks about the weather vane and the metaphor. Well, throughout that entire prologue, not just that chapter, the thing is squeaking and squealing and moving around because that chapter is about like the corruption or that prologue is about the corruption at the heart of the empire, and it's about all the things that the weather vane is a metaphor for. And a lot of Gardens is about that. But when we go there in Deadhouse Gates, we don't hear, I'm pretty sure, we don't hear anything from the weather vane. Because Deadhouse Gates is challenging the ideas from Gardens of the Moon about how bad Lucina is and how corrupt everything is and blah, blah, blah. Deadhouse Gates is like, reversing it. And now in Bonehunters, when the Empire is once again showing how corrupt and rotten it is, and you have this Malik Rel Whisper campaign and all this stuff with the Wickeds, blah, 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 we keep hearing this weather vane squealing. So it's a very conscious, whatever the narrative's doing is whether you hear from the weather vane or not.
Something is rusted in the city of Malaz.
Mm-hmm. Good catch.
Yeah.
Oh, I was so wrong about my speculation before when I said Malik Rel or Tenebralta would be the fell of the crippled
It's the
god.
weather vane.
No,
Why is that?
it's Rulad.
Hmm.
That's my actual speculation. Because
All right.
he has that connection to the crippled god, and he can't be killed because of the crippled god. But if you manage to kill Rulad, that means you're breaking the power of the crippled god.
He does have a special sword, and we do know that special swords can be used to hurt the gods that made them.
Mm-hmm.
We do know 2 of our friends are going to go kill him, or try to at least.
They're gonna,
Yep.
yeah.
Okay, that's it.
Okay, chapter 18.
Is anyone going to kill him? Of
What's
those
that?
2 at least? Oh, I'm asking Panda. She's predicting that he might get killed and it might, rebound on the crippled god. Is it either of these 2 friends?
So is it either Akarium or Karsa?
Yeah, that's the question.
I want to lean towards Karsa. I think Akarium is too broken.
All right, we're moving on to chapter 18 now.
It's a good idea.
What were they? No.
Fiddler shows off his new magic cards. Quick Ben channels his inner peacock, suitably impressing Tavor. Something happens to the moon, but I'm sure it's fine.
A good line.
Well, I mean, the moon.
Unimportant.
What can happen to the
It's
moon?
just a metaphor. Yeah, it's just a metaphor for Apsalar's losing her child, like their last remnants of her childhood.
I cried. It's so sad. Get to just holding her and she's crying.
How poignant is it that, like, immediately after she tells that story, the moon
She
just
finds out
gets
the Corona's
destroyed?
dead.
Huh? No.
Yeah.
I'm just saying, like, she talks about that story, and then the moon gets destroyed. That's some dramatic.
I was thinking more like her talking to Squint about losing her love, right? And then like she finds out in the next scene that like he might be dead.
And both her and Squint were trying to pretend they didn't know each other.
Yes.
It was so beautiful.
That was so beautiful.
Yes.
I love that so much.
I still think about that sometimes. I never forget that conversation. I don't know why.
Aww.
Does this world have only one moon?
I believe so, yeah.
Okay.
And the laws of physics from our world apply.
Generally, yeah.
The part
That's why
where...
Midnight Tides wasn't the name of a book after. Because, no more tides. Can't have any at midnight anymore.
The moon's still there.
Yeah, the moon's not.
Yeah,
gone.
there are bits of the moon still there, yes. Some of them fell.
Oh, you mean parts of the moon fell?
Yeah, I didn't lose a lot of mass, right?
So, like, does anybody named Panda understand what actually happened here? Because I don't.
Okay, this is where, like, all of a sudden things were falling from the sky. So, when people were bringing gifts and trinkets and, like, returning things to the Bonehunters, that reminded me of, like, people bring gifts to a Kovian's barrow. Like, these people saved the 14th from Begotten. Yeah. Oh, I thought that was a nice parallel.
Yeah, there's a lot of soldier worship.
There is. Yeah.
These books are a bit of soldier worship themselves, maybe.
In a lot of ways.
I mean, it kind of makes sense now that I know, like, what Erickson was reading before he wrote these books, because he was reading a bunch of like war stories about soldiers in Vietnam
hmm And the Black Company, which of course,
and the Black
you read the
Company.
Black Company, you definitely want to worship those guys.
Well, it's weird. So, like, I don't think it's too much of a spoiler to say Karkness is like kind of the opposite of these books in terms of worshiping soldiers.
He had to balance
And in
himself
terms
out.
of, it's, they're also much different in terms of how many like how the battles are executed as well, which I think is important there.
But then he goes kind of right back to it in The God Is Not Willing.
hmm
He sees the balance.
I was just gonna say, important thing to note: Fiddler's looking through his new cards, and one of the cards is like, "Oh, this seems like the crippled god," and then someone's like, "Hey, isn't that another card?" And
Right.
Fiddler's like, "It can be two things at once, right?" So important
Mhm.
thing to remember, people. Things can be two things or more.
I listed out all the things that they said about that deck. And so it was, I mean, there's the King of House of Chains, which is the crippled god, and also apparently the Death Slayer in the, was it House of War?
House of War. Yeah.
I guess that kind of makes sense, but yeah, because the crippled god threw the sword that Rulad has. Maybe is that what that means? Like Rulad can't die. He keeps bringing Rulad back.
Yeah, I think it's also just like a metaphor for like the tortured existence that he's been like the cruel god's been living in for so many years. And like his whole thing right now seems to be about keeping things alive in like an awful state. But hey, they're alive, I guess.
I guess. But yeah, and it seems like Timbre is the artist of the
Mhm.
majority of the
Of-
deck.
Yeah, of most of them, right?
Yeah.
Didn't he say
So
there
like-
were some in it that were from a different artist or something?
Yeah, like the Guardians of the Dead. Well,
Yeah,
I mean,
and cards in a deck of dragons tend to change without human input sometimes. So that's also part of it.
does that mean all decks of dragons would be the same? Or are there going to be like some decks that are going to be different than another deck? Like, do they all change at the same time?
So a lot of decks of dragons are just cards. They're
Uh-huh.
not made by people who have any special connection to either the deck of dragons or any magical ability. But the ones that are made by people with magical ability do tend to be influenced by the people that paint them
I
or
see,
make them
I
in whatever
see.
way. But yeah, like there are patterns that people with different decks of dragons will tend to note across them, and a
I
lot of this
see.
is also location specific. And
Mm,
time specific
Like in
and
Deadhouse Gates.
all that. Yeah.
Well, like in Gardens of the Moon, the rope is clearly Cotillion.
mhm.
But in Deadhouse Gates, and I think Memories of Ice, the rope card is used to represent Kalam.
They're very
Yeah.
they're very malleable.
The Assassin of High House Shadow was Kalam in the second two books.
Yeah,
I think
yeah. That's what I'm saying. Yeah,
in the first
not
one,
the
it was
rope.
Cotillion / Apsalar, yeah.
Right. So the cards can mean like different things at different times and things like that.
Same things at
Yep.
the same time, different things.
Some
at the
people
same
take
time.
on different aspects of the cards if they're very important, and we tend to follow important people. So yeah,
There is a pretty important part, I thought it was important at least, when the Bonehunters like kind of came to Devore and they're like, hey, you know, you're one of us. And she's just like, what did I get myself into? And everyone's like, oh my god.
the moment
is she
would
not
have
with
been
us?
perfect,
Right.
but she got a look on her face.
Of all the times for her ironclad control of like every aspect of her facial expression and body language and emotional state to like crack, that's the moment that she like shows
Bad
that
time to
she's
crack.
scared.
Do you,
Huh?
Bad time.
Yasna, do you have thoughts as to why?
Well, I'm not sure. So I don't know if I don't know if she's worried about like her loyalty to the Empress being challenged because of that, or if she's worried like that she might have to feed the 14th to the Empress, or
Mm,
you know, or if it's something about more like meta narrative stuff that she's aware of. Like, we know she knows about the crippled god, so if it's something like more long term, I don't know.
Yeah, my thoughts were like maybe she's afraid that she would be seen as a competition to Lysine because of like
Yeah. That was one of the things that I thought it might be.
yeah, and like or maybe she's afraid of ending up like Dujek or Whiskey Jack, who, you know, the 14th they belong to the 14th. The 14th belonged to them. So interesting.
Yeah.
Dujek was just kind of slowly crushed under the weight of everyone's expectations for about 20, 30 years.
Mhm.
Poor Dujek.
Well, and like, let's say she returns to Unta or wherever, and the Empress is like, okay, you're detached from the 14th Army, hang out with me, or
Mhm.
go to this other army, or
Girls'
whatever.
night.
Yeah.
They go out in the
There's all
town, they get
kinds of things that it
manicures.
could be.
I could see Tavor and Lysine hanging out,
Sure.
talking shit about boys
Or girls.
or girls. Yeah, that's true. Tavor is lesbian, so that is a fair correction.
But like part of it is also maybe this is like the first time that she maybe could feel like she's part of a bigger thing than just herself, potentially. Like all the
That's why
stuff they went
Tavor's
through.
so interesting. So many different ways to interpret a character.
Well, because
Mhm.
we're given like nothing, okay?
And that makes it fun.
It's very
Actually-
deliberate.
Actually, let's bring it back a little bit to House of Chains on this, to something we are given from Felison. Tavor, her introduction to thinking about warfare and armies is like replaying battles with like army figures, like historical battles, and commanding the army like they're just like pieces on a board, you know? So
Yeah.
like it could also be like kind of it hitting home that, and that's kind of how she's done it, you know, up to this point through House of Chains and through Bonehunters as well, is she doesn't tell anybody anything, and she just kind of like, she knows what's best, and she gives the orders, and she'll take the heat, and they don't have to worry about it, and, you know, they just have to do it. And so this could be it hitting home that like there's something more human as well, you know, and that's like foreign to her because she's always kind of viewed it like she's playing those games on the Piran estate.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know,
I like that version.
so there's
I think she's also just kind of overwhelmed with people actually liking her or like having any amount of affection for her. Like you're ours now. Like everyone seems to have treated her with a fair bit of distance until now. Like
Yeah.
her siblings certainly don't seem to be very warm towards her, even though like they might love her.
Right.
it's so weird how I have to dig back like 2 books for any like personal detail about this woman. You know, we don't get anything.
Speaking of characters that tend to hide a lot, Quick Ben in this chapter is forced to stop hiding a little bit, which is very satisfying to me because he is cagey and often to a fault.
To change the tone, we have to talk about Bottle.
Yeah, he got maybe raped.
So when I was reading that scene, like Fiddler talking to him after Quick Ben and, you know, the aerosol saved the Malazan hide, I thought that Quick Ben meant that Bottle peed himself. And as I was reading that section, I was like, wait a minute. Oh no. And I just burst out laughing.
I had the same thought process, yeah.
I was reading next to Mr. Anderson, and then I just burst out laughing, and he was like, "What's so funny?" And then I read that section to him, and he's like, "What are you reading?" Yeah.
Yeah, sounds about right.
I feel like that is part of their gaming. Like they were just playing a game, and then somebody was like, "What if this is just what happens?"
Like the aerosol, like it's very unclear how much like beyond an animal the aerosol is. You know, like she seems to operate in a very instinctive fashion. So I wouldn't call what happened to Bottle rape per se.
I was thinking the same thing.
It's fuzzy.
it's a gray area, I would say. But luckily, Bottle doesn't seem to be too distraught over it.
I
So good for
mean,
Bottle.
he
She
has
likes to
no
play with it.
control.
Yeah.
Nil and Nether, however, didn't like it very much.
Well,
love
Nether's
Nil and
jealous.
oh my god. I was not expecting that part either.
I love Nil and Nether so much.
I love that
Yeah,
everybody
they're
forgets
awesome.
that they're like hundreds of years old and
Yeah.
not children.
They're also
Or-
teenagers at the same time.
Well,
They got
yeah.
hormones.
Yeah, they're both teenagers and not.
Maybe
Although
she wants to
they
start
are
a family
maturing
with
a lot.
Bottle.
Yeah, her mother is harassing her like all the time about it.
They're teenagers now and having hormone stuff, but I'm talking about the people that are like, you're too young to have
young.
eyes like that, you're too young.
I have, yeah. They have lived 1,000 lifetimes in one.
I bet that's the
Right.
contradiction with Nether. And she's like, okay, she actually likes Bottle and she wants to maybe settle down or something. But at the same time, she's like, I don't want to listen to everybody telling me to settle down and have babies.
Yes.
Yeah, she probably senses Bottle's grandmother's influence on him, is attracted to that.
Yeah, maybe.
But the grandmother thing was just an excuse, right? Wasn't it? Didn't the grandmother thing turn out to be like he kept attributing things to his grandmother that were really the Aerosol or something like that?
So like he is dodgy, but his grandmother was a legitimate witch, as far as I can tell, and I think she's like, yeah, the one who educated Bottle and sent him on his way about the I think she taught him the ways of riding the souls of rodents and such.
I see. There is a sad part, sad note in this chapter, and it's Sin and how she is
Ooh,
reacting.
crawling into people's.
Dealing with her trauma.
Sin and Troll need to get together and comfort each other about their traumatic experiences. That's my hot take of the episode.
Does Onrak get to come along or no?
Oh yeah, Honor can come along, yeah. Of course.
Yeah, Sin's
But
story
Honor
is so
does the
sad.
wrong things a lot.
Yeah.
And her brother trying to protect her, and all the soldiers trying to protect her, and Masan Jalani just being nice.
Yeah, and yeah, it is interesting how Sin retreats into kind of like a very childish sexuality.
But nobody's taking advantage of her.
Nobody's taking advantage of her, and no one's going to be allowed to take advantage of her. Which, yep.
Okay, next chapter.
Next chapter. Chapter 19. Cutter finally gets laid. The Malazans discover that the island of Sepik has been converted to a bird sanctuary.
So I sent Hurin a message about this scene that was just like a bunch of trumpets with Cutter finally got laid.
It was a long time coming.
Did
like now he can just chill out now.
Did he and Apsalar ever?
No.
Okay.
No. This was Solar took Cutter's virginity in large part because he was just too in his head, and she needed to just bring him down like about 10 notches on the teen angst scale, and it worked.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, men aren't complicated.
That's not true.
That is nonsense. Pure nonsense.
What? Men aren't complicated? I don't think men are complicated.
I think men are complicated.
Dude, what? You're reading these books and you don't think men are complicated?
Like, I think people are complicated, but like I think a lot of in a lot of ways, men are very simple creatures. And
Iskar
kind of the world
said
complicates.
Right?
Yeah.
Iskar Puss said it. It's
Men don't need to
men have
talk when you have
penises.
penises. Yeah, exactly. He hit the nail on the head.
Crazy.
The world is complicated. People are not complicated. It's like a physical law, like they're simple. Physics at its heart is an incredibly simple discipline. What gets complicated is the interactions between the laws and everything else.
Fair. Spite was talking.
I don't know how serious you're being. I'll just say I disagree a lot.
I disagree as well.
Spite was talking about having to face her sister at the very end, maybe, and only one of them will walk away. So are we going to get like a Thunderdome moment at the end?
Are we?
Is there going to be... Never mind. That's inappropriate.
Now my mind is racing.
Doesn't she also like hope that something like really horrible happens to her sister at one point in this when
Her
she's
name
like
is
around?
Spite.
Yeah, and she calls her my evil sister. So chances are, yeah.
They're both evil.
They're
That's
about
what
equally evil.
I thought. That's
Yep.
ironic.
Are they evil though?
Yeah, I'm not sure about that.
I would call them kind of like forces of nature in a sense.
I agree.
They're definitely very cruel in a lot of ways.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, but Spite seems to be more conscious of how to treat people well who are at least her allies.
I
Like,
think
What about
she's
Envy?
kind
Envy
of like
did
a
the same thing.
sociopath that has learned how to use people in ways that they find agreeable.
I guess, but if so, she's a very insightful sociopath who
She's
who
been
knows how
alive for so long. She's very old.
she treats the people around her that she's allied with, like they're whole human beings, and like that, like they have needs that, and she like addresses a lot of those needs, and she sees a moment of joy, and she doesn't want to interrupt it with her petty pain that she's feeling. Like,
Sure.
I don't know.
Yeah.
I feel like Envy would be like, "Oh, why are you focused on that? I got hurt." Like, I don't know.
I think that's an act put on by Envy, though. I think she's actually really caring underneath.
I
I think she just likes to play diva.
think she's carrying
Yeah.
away.
Anyway,
I'm Team Spite all the way.
I like them both.
maybe that's a question we can ask when this episode releases, because Spotify has a polling option: envy or spite. Which team are you
Or
on?
both.
Or
Or
both.
Malice.
And on Twitter too.
I pick Malice, by the way.
There was an insight here where insight by whom? Insight by me, maybe. Actually, what am I talking about?
You're talking about how insightful you are.
Thank you. Oh my
Super
goodness.
insightful.
Okay. There was the Veed, Terralac
Veed?
Veed. That guy. Snot man.
Gross and but gross man.
Yeah. He was talking about talking to Icarium, and it's like, hey, your purpose is to like bring peace, right? By the sword, da da da. And Terralac Veed was thinking, like, Mopple Runt, you were a fool. How you might have made use of this jag for the good of all. Icarium is the sword, after all, forged to be used as all weapons are. The weapon, then, that promises peace. Why, you foolish Trell, did you ever flee from this? And I had a thought in my head, the Iron Giant. Like, Icarium is like the Iron Giant. Even with the amnesia.
I can see it.
And
Yeah.
and
No, that's
I want
absolutely correct.
Icarium. I want Icarium to have an ending like the Iron Giant. Anyway, if you have not seen the Iron Giant, go watch it.
It's a good
I'm having
movie.
like deja vu right now. Did you bring this up in the group chat, or have you said something about the Iron Giant before?
I think it's something you always knew was true, and Panda's just bringing it out.
Maybe I said it in DMs.
Somewhere.
Maybe.
Maybe.
Yeah,
But yes.
Terralac Veed is really playing the devil on Icarium's shoulder hard. And
Yeah.
specifically, like he is spouting a lot of misanthropic, cynical stuff that people like to say about humans, and just kind of extending it and using it to justify an atrocity, which to me feels very on point, and it feels very pertinent. Like, it's a common thing to say, at least among people my age, I hate people. People are the worst. And
Common around my
It's
age too.
yeah, it's an understandable thing to say and think, because like there are atrocities happening all the time. But I think one of the things that Steve wants to do with the series is show those bad things. But like there is a redemptive nature to humanity, and like by and large people are good, and by and large people don't deserve to just be murdered by a rage monster.
At least not like humanity as a whole.
Yeah, and like Terralac is like, nobody's innocent, and
Right.
that's why they all need to die. If you show me one innocent person, then I'll be with you. Which is kind of like Lot's conversation with God in the Bible. Find me 10 decent men in the city. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Hair like Veed. Ugh.
Yeah, he's one of my least favorite characters in
Yeah.
the series.
He is
No redeeming qualities at all.
And
pretty
he usurped one of my favorites, Mappo, and he's just being
Oh.
so toxic.
redeeming quality is that he doesn't support big hair gel, and he instead has his own bootleg solution.
Despite turning into a dragon, though, that was cool.
Dope.
I think it happens next chapter, but yeah,
Does it happen next chapter? Are we in chapter
Yeah,
19?
probably.
we're so,
Chapter 20 is like
we should
another climax.
expedite things since you have to leave soon.
Agreed.
Yeah, I got a flight
If anyone
to
has
catch.
any final things on,
No, yeah, that is next chapter. Okay.
it's a nice bird sanctuary, I will say, although maybe not a great implementation. Chapter 20. The sky falls. As it crumbles, they stand tall and they face it all. Tene Peralta joins a toxic support group. Devore makes some new friends.
Did you just quote Adele?
Yes. I had to.
love it.
I knew that was some kind of quote, and I knew it was nothing I would ever get.
You're welcome. But thank you.
It's one of her better songs.
Whoa,
Panda.
whoa. Okay, we'll have words later. Anyway, yes.
All right. Yeah.
What deal do you think Perron made with Hood?
Oh, goodness gracious. I don't know what Hood would have wanted. Does
A dead
Hood want
cat.
his, adoptive daughter, maybe?
Dawson's adopted daughter?
Hood's, or not
Dunsparrow,
adoptive daughter.
right?
Huh?
Oh,
Dunsparrow?
Dunsparrow?
Dunsparrow.
Oh,
Maybe
okay.
he wants something to do with Dunsparrow. I don't know.
That kind
I
of seems
bet it's
small.
something. I bet it's something bigger, something related to chaos or the crippled god.
Well,
And
maybe.
I would just like to say that I really like this. Like I like how even if in this situation, in this extreme situation where all Hood's plans would have been ruined if he hadn't worked together with Perron, he still made the deal because he has to make a deal because he's
Yeah,
the
I was
Lord of
gonna
Death,
say
and you
that.
don't cheat death without a bargain.
Mm,
Yeah. He wants to make the deal, but he can't do the thing without making the deal, even though it's in his interest to do so.
The expectations mortals have of him have constrained him in this way.
Yeah.
maybe Hood wants a special card made by Perron.
Yeah, like Hood already has a card in the deck of dragons, more like bejazzled.
Yes.
I think if it was something that small, that people wouldn't be as shocked as they were.
Well,
Like,
maybe
people
Yeah,
they're
get clickbait.
shocked that it's so small. What are we talking about?
You got me. Can't argue with that.
Yep.
A lot has been made out of Hood's genitals in the show,
Yeah,
or in the
maybe.
books.
Oh,
Maybe
you know
it is
what?
shocked that
Sex change?
Maybe he actually doesn't have any because they were taken from him and he wants them back. And Perron's like, I don't know how I'm going to do it, but okay.
That's
Yeah.
that would probably be really difficult to do too.
Yeah.
So I think that's the best answer we're gonna get.
Okay.
Okay, we should get something out of the way. Yeah, you talk about your moon thing, Yasna.
Yeah, so Panda, what happened with this moon stuff and Haboric? Like, I get that he's the shield anvil, but like,
Okay.
are the Jade people from the moon? Or are they what hit the moon and then fell to Earth?
Uh-huh.
They're like more crippled gods, right? Like, is the crippled god from the moon? What's going on here? I don't get it.
I don't think they're more crippled gods. I think that I mean the crippled god in itself is like he's his own thing. Well, now whether or not he's like the same kind of people as
That's what I'm saying, though. Like, are they more of whatever he was before he was brought down,
but
in the fall? Or,
but that doesn't
and if
quite
so,
make
like,
sense. It doesn't quite make
hasn't
sense
that been
because
speculated about, like, over and over through the course of the books by the characters? Is that just not true? Or is that, I don't know.
well, we had that scene where it was Haboric who like went to a different dimension or whatever, or a different out of the world, right? And he saw all these jade statues with people trapped in them. But like is the jade statue the same as the crippled god? I don't think so.
Or the people
Um,
in the jade statue. I mean,
I don't think it's the people in the jade statue are the same as the crippled god either.
didn't
Because
they? Wasn't the speculation that they were like trying to get him back? They were like looking for him, like it's like his
yes,
family or something. But you don't
but
think it's true?
maybe he was the god of them and they're his worshippers.
Oh,
But
interesting.
I think it was the
So he was already a
proximity.
god before.
I think so. Um, I think that it was Haboric's proximity to the jade statue that he touched that triggered the event.
Oh, so the stuff in Deadhouse Gates led to this thing with the moon happening?
I think so. I think because it happened all of a sudden. Like there
Are
has to be a
these
trigger.
are these being well, that doesn't mean that we know what the trigger is. Are these beings like did they collide with the moon and then fall to Earth or is like whatever hit the moon broke them off from the moon and they fell to Earth? Like I don't get it.
Maybe they were buried statues or jump cartwheeling statues on the moon.
So I think I'll explain the mechanics of what happened, although not the motivations behind it, because I think it's both important and confuses a lot of people, and it doesn't need to be confusing because you have all the information you need. So basically,
What I was wondering, I didn't know if I had all the information I needed yet and just couldn't put the puzzle together, or if like
uh,
12 more puzzle pieces are in the crippled god or whatever.
It's
I'm not
both.
gonna, I'm not gonna tell you the nature of the jade, whatever that is. But in Deadhouse Gates, Haboric touched the statue, was whisked away into this into one of these jade entities. He saw a rift, and he saw these things going through the rift.
Right.
So this jade stuff is being dragged through reality
I see.
to the world of Malazan, and on the way, some of these jade entities hit the moon,
I
and
see.
that caused the moon to be to shatter, and some bits of the moon to fall to Earth, and some bits like the jade entities to fall to Earth. And then Haboric, through his connection to the jade, was able to absorb them rather than them destroying a continent like the crippled god did.
So, and well, he didn't really absorb them, didn't he? Didn't he make the jade statues on Ototaro Island be like a focal point for them to like go to
Like
Ototaro Island instead of falling
he
all
drew
over
them in. He attracted all of them. A lot of the like the jade arms weren't all just from statues. I think they were just like Borg's hands, except for magnified. And then he absorbed all of that in a sense.
And
Although
that's
there was
because he's
a
the shield
reduced
anvil.
and
Or
the
that's
quote
how
that I
he
have from
became.
this is
Yeah, isn't that so cool? Like he thought the whole time he was the Destriant,
Destriant.
and like
but he's the shield anvil.
he's the shield anvil.
Yeah.
It's like wow.
It makes a lot more sense for his character too to be the shield
And
anvil.
I really
It
like
kind of seems
the
like, oh duh, I should have not. I should have seen that
Yeah.
coming. And I just believed these suckers.
I really like the last thing we hear from him here. One cannot, in any real measure, remember pain.
Mm-hmm.
So,
So
yeah, like, no, go ahead.
is it that then when Haboric touched the jade statue that triggered the rift to open?
Or were they already
think,
coming through?
I think the rift was already there. I think it was
Okay.
made by
the
like when the
sorcerers?
crippled god was torn through,
Okay.
and the rift was left there. He might have had some effect in attracting them though.
I
But
see.
the reason that he had such an effect was because of his severed link to Fenner, and
Mhm.
when he touched the stumps of his hands, which are both metaphorical and literal links to his god, like they kind of the jade kind of reacted and like formed a new link with whatever the jade is, and
I see.
that's kind of what was warring through Haboric's
Right.
body and soul for the past 4 books.
Okay. I still think then, yeah, Haboric. I mean the timing of it, unless this is just how Erickson wanted to write it, and there's no other motivation or.
I think
deeper-
that's probably correct.
that's just how he wanted it to
I think there's a
happen?
causal link between him touching the statue and the statues deciding to come at this time. Although
Oh, okay.
it's kind of hard to tell sometimes.
Okay.
I think the evidence that there are already jade statues on the planet means that at least the link was open when the crippled god came, and like you said, Panda, when he touched the statues, it might have been another catalyst for more to come.
See.
And if you reread, like, I think if you reread his exchanges with the people in the Jade, then you'll probably get a clearer idea of like what their nature is.
Okay.
But I'm not sure if I want to give it away at this moment explicitly.
Okay. You're gonna appreciate this. Not. When I was reading about these giant statues falling from the sky, you know what I was thinking?
Transformers?
Yeah.
No, I do appreciate that. I want you to lean into it as much as possible. Please write an essay that's a comparative analysis between the Transformers Michael Bay movies and Malazan Book of the Fallen, and email it to Steve Erickson.
One of my friends, she posted an article, and I only read the headline. I haven't read the actual article, but it basically said Steven Spielberg told Michael Bay to stop making Transformers movies.
Yep.
Thank you, Steven.
So I remembered what I was going to say. Okay, so there's a character in one of these sequences. I don't know if it's this chapter or the previous chapter. Whatever. I saved all the Jade stuff for the end. So there's a character who's looking at all this stuff happen and is like, well, one of these gods out here somewhere saw this coming, and they planned for it. So whoever you are, do something, right? Well, obviously it's not Feiner. It probably wasn't Hood, because, well, maybe it was Hood. I don't know. Could be Hood. Did Treach? Do you think Treach? I doubt it. Treach is just like this dumb war tiger, right? I mean...
Hey, he's a himbo.
He's a himbo. Like, did anybody actually plan to get Haboric where he needed to go, like a god? Or was that character just wrong and just assuming, like, somebody's got to save us? Or, like...
I think that character was just wrong.
Okay.
Yeah, a lot of what the gods do isn't so much like a rock solid figured out plan as is like in a game of chess. They're doing whatever move they think will be most advantageous for them in the future, and they do have some of the steps worked out, but not all. Yeah,
but even with that, you have Cotillion and Kellenbred, planning out like, we want to get to this end in 2 years, so we got to push on this piece and this piece and this piece, and hopefully all these things will come together in 2 years in this city, and it'll kind of we'll be able to get what we want out of it. So they may not have the entire thing planned out like they have, like it's a script or something, but they, they're trying to prefigure a lot of this stuff.
It's very mysterious how much of this Shadowthorn, Cotillion, and by extension the other gods who were really good at playing Puppet Master have figured out, and how much they're just making up as they go along. And that's a good question. It's probably a lot of back and forth and a lot of both. Yeah. We should probably get to listener questions before Panda has to.
One last thing. I think there is a causal link with the moon shattering and Ardata, who is the queen of spiders and the moon.
Right.
Magora calls on the power of Ardata, right, to heal Mappo, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it seemingly seems to bleed the power from the moon. And I think that's also part of the reason why the moon shattered.
Because the power was drained from the moon?
Yeah.
Oh, maybe.
Got it.
All right.
So before listener questions, I know Panda has to go soon, but I just wanted to briefly say I really like the banter between Ganoaz and Noto Boyle and Ormulogon and Gumball and all of these pieces, and it's very short. You don't get a lot of Piran with his new army, but I liked a lot of the banter and Piran talking crap and stuff like that. It was fun.
Calling him Boyle, refusing to call him Noto Boyle. You know what's cool? The gray swords.
The gray helms.
The gray helms.
Yeah, how cool is that?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. But
this only took 3 more books.
This begs a question for me. Does do the wolves have like different shield anvils and destriants like in different parts of the world? Like that's what I thought when I read this. Like, because they already had a shield anvil and a destrian and stuff.
There are 2 of them.
Like, do gods have multiples of these things, or do they only have one on the whole planet?
Usually, gods only have one, as far as I can tell. Lady
Well,
Sweden.
that's a dark portent.
Oh, let's do.
Lady Sweden asks, "How do you feel about the way Dujek died? I felt so sad that he died in that way.
It was very not ceremonious.
Yeah, off camera.
I mean, I guess in reality, he was pretty much dead. Like,
After memory suffice.
Yeah.
I wanted a better death for him, whatever that means, but it makes sense.
I do appreciate how Malazan runs the gamut with character deaths. Sometimes they're really heroic and noble, but that's generally the exception to the rule. Most of the time, they just die for whatever reason. Sometimes it's like horrible and on screen. Sometimes it's off screen and ignoble, and it's just one of those times. So yeah, but I did feel disappointed that he did die that way when the first time I read the series. Lady Sweden also asks, "How do you feel about the plot here? I'm enjoying the ride, but I can't say it's clear to me where we are heading like we had in the previous books." Yes, I agree. I think that's definitely deliberate on Steve's part. But yeah, like I remember when I first read this, I was like 8 books in. I'm like, I don't know where this is going. I don't know the end game of the series at all.
Yeah. I was shocked that we did a whole scene switch with Malaz City this late in the book, too.
Is it a good thing that your readers don't know where the series is going when they're 8 books in or 6 books in?
It depends on what you're going for.
Yeah, and that's the thing is like if I were reading this on my own, I would have DNF'd the series.
Dang.
I would have DNF'd it for a while. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's something Steve was probably aware of while he wrote this series, and decided to do it this way anyways, because he feels like it's more in keeping with the themes of the series.
I think you just like my personality is I like to read eclectically, and so like to spend so much time in one world
series, yeah,
is a lot to ask of myself, and it's just
especially when you don't know where it's going. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and there are so many other books to read.
I don't understand. Like that's definitely a selling point for me. Like I'm this far in and I still have no idea how it's going to end.
Do you think, Panda, and I don't know the answer to this for myself either, do you think you would even know that this thing was building up to something big with the crippled god if you didn't if you were reading it as it came out and you didn't already know the last book was called The Crippled God?
I think yes, because there's enough like pointers to like there's something that will happen, but I think it's so meandering that
do you think you'd know that was going to be the big thing or just like one of the things? You know what I mean? Like it seems like there's whole books where you're like where he's kind of backgrounded a little bit.
Yeah.
You don't even hear about him except for like in this weird quote in the first book at all.
Yeah, I mean the Crippled God is definitely like when I was reading the first book I was like I did not know that would be a thing if I didn't know the last book was called The Crippled God. Yeah.
Simonu asks, "Forgive me, I can't remember which Malaz Potter Steve said this to or exactly how he phrased it, but I remember some of his GMing advice being essentially, let illusion be OP, you don't regret it." That was me. It's not an accident that in a series where the POV matters so much, the magic praise on perspective is so effective. These chapters are perhaps as clear an indication of this principle in the world at large as any in the series, in my opinion, not only with Quick Ben, but also with the obscuring of Hood's conversation with Piranha and indications of the fluctuating status of truth in Malaz City. Now that the first timers have also been given a bit more of an insight into Mocker from Corlo and Serena in the last book, how do you all feel about this aspect of Steve's magic and writing?
Great question.
First of all, intelligent way to phrase that. I agree. It's definitely not accidental that Steve likes illusion magic so much and likes playing around with the perspective so much. As someone who is interested in history, this is like always happening in there. like you cannot separate history from the people who are telling the history and their agendas. And I think Steve wants to let us know, like, this is like, that's kind of okay. History is a story we tell ourselves about our past. And like people tell the story differently for different reasons. And you kind of have to accept that there isn't an objective way to view history. You're not going to be able to get that because we don't have access to the information, and everybody perceives the information different.
The Holocaust happened.
So I think that given how big of a theme that is in the series, illusion magic is rather underutilized in the
That
series.
you love.
So yeah, okay, that's fair. But at least apparent illusion magic, apparent to the reader. I mean, we're 6 books deep. There hasn't been too much, and I think there have even been some missed opportunities to have it where it was like really explicitly called for. Like in Deadhouse Gates, when the illusionist guy gets eaten to death by rats.
Culp.
Like, there's why didn't he try at least to do an illusion? Maybe it could have failed, and like the rats could have been like, "Oh well, we smell you, and you're not good enough an illusion to make your illusion smell." But Culp bites the dust, and he's an illusionist, and he didn't even try to do anything with it before he got eaten. And that would have been a perfect opportunity to like fake us out with a Culp death, and then he'd be like, "Oh no, I'm right here," things like that. I don't know. Like, he likes illusion magic a lot, but I haven't seen very much of it. The closest thing is whenever we're in shadow, the illusory nature of shadow is very all over the place. But you don't see too much of shadow practitioners like Culp actually doing illusions. And then when you do, you get like Quickbin doing his big illusion, and somebody adds something to it, and it becomes real instead of just illusion. So it's like, I don't know. I wish it was in the series more, honestly.
So there are points in the series where he does play around with the magic of it more. But I also think that Steve, for the most part, isn't really interested in showing off flashy magic. Like he's not very interested in spectacle like Brandon Sanderson is. So
that's fair. There's a lot of spectacle in it, though.
There's a lot of spectacle.
There is. But I think a lot of it is just like kind of incidental to the themes he's trying to go with.
That's fair. You could probably work those two together, though, and like this listener did with their question.
He does on occasion, and you might like The God Is Not Willing.
Okay, fair enough.
You know what would be a great illusion? If Steve led the reader down one path this entire series, but then at the end, bam, it was something else.
Yeah. Quickben is the evil guy.
Yeah.
Tavor is very clear and not opaque at all.
Right. Anyway, like that to me would be, at a point where you're like, okay, this is my expectation or my prediction the whole time. And then all of a sudden something changes and you're like, okay, now I don't actually know where it's going. That's where it gets interesting, but not like for the entire series. You don't know where it's going.
Hasn't he kind of done that already with multiple books in the series? So shouldn't
Within
we
the
expect him
books.
to do that? Yeah.
But
shouldn't
not
we expect him
like
to do that with the series as a whole eventually too?
I mean, that's what I would expect, but right now I don't even know what really like a solid speculation for how the series is gonna go.
I think we can have a great conversation about this at the end of the series.
Sounds good.
Yeah. We should probably wrap up now, though, eh? It's 1 minute till your hard cutoff time.
Gots to go.
Yeah. All right. So that concludes this episode. If you guys want to join the read along or contribute listener questions, check us out on the Legendarium Discord. You can find a link on www.thelegendarium.com. Also follow us on Twitter at Green Team Pod for updates and fun times. Check out the Legendarium podcast for Wheel of Time, Cosmere, Lord of the Rings content, and so much more. Thanks to the panelists of this episode, Befuddled Panda, Huron Fan, and Yasna as a Boy. I'm Ashaman. Until next time.
Bye-bye.
Goodbye.
Keep you.